Courtrooms are meant to be places of order and control, but when emotions run high, they can turn into scenes of chaos. From a judge gagging a defendant with duct tape, to a mother collapsing in shock after hearing her daughter's sentence. Some moments are so explosive, they leave everyone in the room stunned. These aren't just legal battles, they're stories of raw human emotion, desperation, and sometimes pure madness. Would you believe what people are capable of when the stakes are that high? Case 1, Franklin Williams versus Judge John Russo. Franklin Williams' courtroom appearance was anything but ordinary. He was facing a sentencing hearing before Judge John Russo at the Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court after being convicted of a range of serious charges: armed robbery, kidnapping, theft, and weapons offenses. Given the severity of the charges, you'd expect the sentencing to be a solemn affair, but what unfolded in the courtroom turned into a spectacle that left everyone stunned. Right from the beginning, Franklin Williams was not interested in staying quiet. He interrupted repeatedly, often with rambling, incoherent complaints. At one point, he even protested that he had just met his lawyer, as if that would somehow change the outcome. But the interruptions didn't stop there. Williams continued to talk over the judge and his attorneys, disregarding the basic rules of courtroom decorum. Judge Russo, clearly frustrated, gave Williams numerous warnings to stay silent, reminding him that the same rules applied here as they did during his trial. But Williams just wouldn't listen. The judge even tried telling him to zip it, hoping that might bring some order to the proceedings. But Williams kept going, his interruptions relentless. After nearly 30 minutes of back-and-forth disruptions, Judge Russo made a move that shocked the courtroom. He ordered deputies to gag Williams with red duct tape. Yes, you read that right. Duct tape. A group of 6 sheriff's deputies descended on Williams, and while he tried to resist, they eventually secured the tape over his mouth. Incredibly, Williams kept trying to talk, even with the gag in place. This moment didn't just stir up the courtroom, it sparked a heated debate outside as well. Critics argued that Judge Russo had crossed a line. While the defendant was clearly out of control, gagging someone in court with duct tape seemed extreme to many. Legal experts questioned whether this was a violation of Williams' rights and whether Judge Russo could have handled it differently, with more patience or a different approach. Case 2, Rashana Morrison's custody meltdown. Rashana Morrison's child custody hearing quickly turned from a legal proceeding into an explosive courtroom drama that no one could have predicted. The case involved a bitter dispute between Rashana and her ex-husband, Colin Morrison, both of whom were fighting for custody of their child. Colin claimed that Rashana had withheld their son from him and argued that he deserved full custody. Meanwhile, Rashana painted a picture of Colin as an absent father who had failed to provide financial support. The tension was thick in the courtroom as both parties hurled accusations at each other. It had already been 3 days of intense arguments, and Judge James Hill's patience was visibly wearing thin. Known for his usual calm demeanor, Judge Hill had enough when Rashana couldn't stop talking over him, her frustration boiling over. He warned her multiple times to stay quiet and show respect to the court, but she just couldn't contain herself. After she interrupted again, Judge Hill made good on his warning and sentenced her to 48 hours in jail for contempt of court. What should have been the end of Rashana's outbursts only marked the beginning of an all-out meltdown. Furious at the ruling, she exploded in a fit of rage, physically attacking the deputies as they moved to restrain her. The scene quickly escalated into chaos as Rashana's brother, sitting in the gallery, jumped in to try and defend her. With both siblings resisting the officers, the courtroom descended into total disorder. It took several deputies to finally bring the situation under control. Rashana's aggressive behavior didn't just earn her more time in jail, it led to a longer sentence. Once the dust settled, she was sentenced to 30 days behind bars for her violent outburst in contempt of court. Her brother, who had also contributed to the chaos, faced his punishment as well. Case 3, Kai Andrea Cook's unexpected sentence. Kai Andrea Cook, just 18 years old, found herself facing serious charges for her role in a violent carjacking incident. The crime involved her luring a man, Emmanuel Purcell, through a dating app with the intent to rob him. When Purcell showed up at the meeting spot, Cook's boyfriend, Kendrick Bass, attempted to steal his car. In the ensuing chaos, Bass shot Purcell, leaving him seriously injured. While Cook didn't pull the trigger herself, her involvement in setting up the crime was undeniable. Going into her sentencing, Cook's attorney had assured her that her clean record would work in her favor. They believed that she'd walk away with probation or community service. With no prior convictions and her role in the crime being more passive, the expectation was that the judge would go easy on her. Cook approached the court confidently, ready to apologize for what had happened, but still believing she wouldn't see the inside of a jail cell. What happened next completely shattered those expectations. Judge Matt Foxman, after hearing her statement and taking the crime's severity into account, delivered a shocking sentence: 20 years in prison. Cook's face told the entire story. Her expression of disbelief and horror was impossible to miss. But it was her mother's reaction that truly rocked the courtroom. She collapsed, wailing uncontrollably in the gallery as the reality of the sentence sank in. The emotional fallout was intense, with the courtroom descending into chaos as both women screamed in shock and devastation. But the story didn't end there. In a surprising twist, Cook's mother later produced an audio recording of Cook's public defender, Frank Scott, in which he had assured them that probation was all she would face. This confusion was enough for Judge Foxman to allow Cook to withdraw her initial plea. At a later hearing, with a clearer understanding of what was at stake, Cook accepted a reduced sentence of 11 years. Case 4. Daniel Villegas, not guilty verdict. Daniel Villegas' story is one of justice delayed, but ultimately served. In 1993, at just 16 years old, Villegas was accused of a double murder in El Paso, Texas. The victims, Armando Lazo and Bobby England, were shot and killed, and Villegas found himself at the center of the investigation. Under intense pressure from the police, he confessed to the crime, though he later claimed the confession was coerced. Despite his protests of innocence, he was convicted of capital murder in 1995 and sentenced to life in prison. For 18 long years, Villegas sat behind bars, fighting to prove that he had been wrongfully convicted. His family never gave up on him, launching a tireless campaign to bring his case back to court. In 2013, their efforts paid off when an appeals court overturned his conviction, citing serious issues with how his confession had been obtained and raising doubts about his guilt. A retrial was ordered, and in 2018, Villegas once again faced a jury, this time with hope for a different outcome. The tension in the courtroom during his retrial was palpable. Villegas, who had spent nearly 2 decades of his life in prison for a crime he insisted he didn't commit, waited nervously as the jury reached its verdict. When the words "not guilty" were finally read aloud, it was as though the weight of the world was lifted from his shoulders. Overcome with emotion, Villegas collapsed in tears, falling to his knees in pure relief. The courtroom, filled with his supporters and family, erupted in cheers and applause. His wife and children embraced, finally able to celebrate the end of this long nightmare. This moment was a rare glimpse of joy in what had been a tragic and grueling legal battle. It highlighted how difficult and prolonged the fight for justice can be, especially for those wrongfully convicted. Daniel Villegas' case was a powerful reminder that the system doesn't always get it right the first time, and sometimes it takes years of relentless effort to correct a mistake. For Villegas and his family, the not guilty verdict was not just a legal win, but a long-awaited return to freedom. Case 5, Matthew Miller's salad stabbing. Matthew Miller's case is one of those courtroom moments that leaves everyone shaking their heads, wondering how such a bizarre situation could unfold in real life. Miller was accused of stabbing 2 grocery store employees, and the reason? He was trying to steal a $7.99 chicken Caesar salad. The idea that someone would resort to violence over something so trivial is shocking enough. But Miller's behavior in court took things to another level entirely. During his appearance before Judge Mindy Glazer at Miami-Dade Circuit Court, Miller showed little to no remorse for his actions. In fact, his attitude was almost flippant. As Judge Glazer read out the charges against him, armed robbery, aggravated battery, and theft, Miller sat there seemingly unbothered. His complete disregard for the seriousness of his crimes reached its peak when he claimed that one of his victims wasn't even a real person. It was a statement that left everyone in the courtroom, especially Judge Glazer, stunned. The absurdity of his claim, combined with his nonchalant demeanor, painted a picture of a man completely disconnected from reality. Judge Glazer didn't hold back in her response. She scolded Miller for his shocking lack of remorse and emphasized the gravity of his actions. "It's not funny," she told him. "You could have killed someone." The fact that Miller had nearly taken lives over a salad and seemed to treat it like a joke infuriated her. And she wasn't alone. Everyone present in the courtroom could see the seriousness of the situation, except it seemed for Miller himself. The outcome of the hearing reflected just how dangerous the court viewed Miller's behavior. He was held without bond, meaning he wouldn't be going anywhere until his next court appearance. His lack of remorse, combined with his bizarre outburst, only added to the surreal nature of the moment. In the end, this case wasn't just about a stolen salad. It was a disturbing glimpse into how little some people value the safety of others. Matthew Miller's actions, both in the grocery store and in court, were a reminder that sometimes the reasons behind violent crimes can be as mind-boggling as the crimes themselves. Case 6. Jaleel Hoskins' violent outburst. Jaleel Hoskins' sentencing hearing was supposed to bring closure to a horrific crime, but it turned into a scene of chaos that no one in the courtroom will soon forget. Hoskins was being sentenced for the brutal murder of his girlfriend, Latrice Mays. After killing her, he disposed of her body in a dumpster, which was later collected and incinerated before police could recover it. It was a crime that shocked the community, and Hoskins was facing the consequences in court. As the judge delivered the sentence, 50 to 100 years in prison, the tension in the room was palpable, but what came next was completely unexpected. In a sudden and violent outburst, Hoskins lunged for the courtroom microphone, ripping it from its stand and hurling it across the room. The act was aggressive, and it caught everyone off guard. Deputies immediately rushed in to subdue him, leading to a wild struggle in front of the entire courtroom. Hoskins resisted fiercely, and for a few moments the situation spiraled out of control. As if the physical confrontation between Hoskins and the deputies wasn't enough, things took a darker turn when his family members, seated in the gallery, began to get involved. Emotions were already running high, and seeing Hoskins restrained set off a chain reaction. His relatives started shouting at the deputies, and tensions quickly escalated. What had been a formal sentencing hearing turned into a chaotic scene, with family members clashing with law enforcement. In the midst of the chaos, the judge had to call for a recess, trying to regain order in the courtroom. Deputies eventually managed to control Hoskins, dragging him out of the room while his family continued to argue with officers. The entire event left an indelible mark on everyone present, a stark reminder of how volatile courtroom settings can become, especially when emotions are pushed to the brink. Hoskins' violent outburst not only delayed the sentencing process, but also underscored the deep emotional impact of his crime. His lack of remorse, paired with the involvement of his family, added to the tragedy of the moment, making it clear that the scars from this case would last far beyond the courtroom walls. Case 7. Judge Richard Scotty's Constitution. Throw in a courtroom, you expect professionalism and control, especially from the judge who holds the power over the entire process. But during a jury selection for a case involving a man accused of multiple physical assaults on minors, Judge Richard Scotty shocked everyone with an outburst that no one saw coming. The case was already highly sensitive, given the serious nature of the charges. Jury selection was dragging on, with potential jurors expressing difficulty in remaining impartial, which isn't uncommon in cases involving minors and violent crimes. One particular juror admitted that they couldn't serve fairly due to the emotional weight of the case. This should have been a routine dismissal, but Judge Scotty's patience had worn thin by this point. Instead of calmly excusing the juror, Scotty snapped. In a fit of frustration, he grabbed a pocket-sized Constitution from his bench and, in an uncharacteristic and shocking move, threw it at the wall. The courtroom fell into an eerie silence. You could practically hear people holding their breath as the small booklet, ironically a symbol of law and order, collided with the wall, as if mocking the very principles it stood for. The gesture felt more like a dramatic scene from a movie than a real-life courtroom. It wasn't just the physical act of throwing the Constitution that stunned everyone. It was the fact that a judge whose role is to remain composed and level-headed in the face of conflict had lost his cool so completely. You could feel the discomfort ripple through the room. This wasn't just a minor slip in decorum, it was a significant breach of conduct that was going to have real consequences. And it did. Judge Scotty's outburst triggered an ethics investigation. The courts don't take lightly to judges behaving in such a way, especially when the case involves vulnerable victims and serious charges. His actions cast doubt on his ability to preside over the trial impartially, and those doubts were serious enough to result in the defendant being granted a new trial. This meant the entire legal process had to be restarted from scratch, delaying justice for the victims and forcing everyone involved to relive the painful proceedings. For Judge Scotty, the consequences were not just about the investigation. It was about how a moment of weakness in such a high-stakes environment can unravel everything. His loss of control in that courtroom became a lasting stain on his record, a reminder that those trusted with the law must be held to the highest standards, even when the pressure mounts. The fallout from this incident was not just personal for Scotty, it rippled through the entire justice system, affecting everyone involved in the case. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.